What would you do if a simple visit to a restaurant turned into an unforgettable lesson in power, justice, and the consequences of prejudice? Picture this. A young black woman, excited to enjoy a nice meal, steps into a trendy restaurant. She's dressed well, confident, and expects nothing but the usual warm hospitality. But as she walks up to the host's stand, something strange happens. The waiter looks her up and down, his smile fading almost instantly. Without a word, he points to a far corner and coldly directs her to take a seat, almost as if she doesn't belong. You can feel the tension rising as she stands there, confused, but still trying to keep her composure. She doesn't argue, doesn't cause a scene. Instead, she quietly walks out, her heart heavy with disbelief. But here's the twist. This isn't where the story ends. In this video, we'll unravel what happens next, and trust me, it's something you won't see coming. You'll discover how one woman, hurt by an act of racism, flipped the script in a way that changed everything for the restaurant and its employees. You'll learn about the power of perseverance and self-respect, and how one act of injustice can be turned around in a dramatic, life-changing way. By the end, you'll see how this woman's quiet strength led her to a shocking victory, showing that sometimes those who are wronged can have the last word. This story isn't just about a racist encounter. It's about standing up when you're pushed down. It's about unexpected twists and real consequences. Stick around till the end, because what happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about power, justice, and fate. The moment she stepped out of the restaurant, the weight of the rejection settled heavily on her shoulders. It wasn't just about being denied a meal. It was a painful reminder of the world's unfairness, the kind of injustice she had faced before, but hoped would never touch her again. She was no stranger to discrimination. Growing up, she had learned early that sometimes the color of your skin could determine how you were treated. But this time, something felt different. This wasn't just a random act of prejudice. It was personal. As the door of the restaurant closed behind her, she felt a fire spark within. Anger mixed with disappointment, but it was the determination that burned brightest. She wasn't going to let this incident slide, not this time. She knew that speaking up on the spot wouldn't change anything. It would only lead to a scene. One that would be quickly dismissed by the very people who saw her as less than. No, this had to be done the right way, a way that would make sure she was heard, not just as a woman who had been disrespected, but as someone who could change the game entirely. She didn't rush into action. She took her time, reflecting on her next move. A sudden outburst would give her no power, but patience. Patience could turn the tables. She knew she needed to gather the right resources, make a plan that would shock them. To outsiders, her silence might have looked like defeat, but inside, she was already plotting her next steps. The restaurant had made a mistake, and she was determined to make them pay. Without violence, without chaos, just with the undeniable strength that comes from refusing to be silenced. Her actions would remain a mystery for now. What would she do? Would she write a complaint and go to the media? Or did she have something far more impactful in mind? All anyone knew for sure was that this wasn't the end of the story. There was more to come. and the world was about to witness a change that no one saw coming. And so the question lingered in the air. What would she do next? The next day, the girl walked through the same doors, but everything was different. This time, she wasn't the hesitant, confused woman from the day before. No, today, she exuded something new: confidence, authority. She was dressed in a tailored suit, the kind of outfit that told everyone in the room she had a purpose. Her steps were deliberate, calculated, as if she had already claimed the space, as if this restaurant belonged to her. The same staff were still there, none of them recognizing the shift in energy that filled the room as she walked past them. The waiter, standing at his usual post, looked up from his duties. At first, he didn't recognize her, but as she walked closer, the recognition hit him like a wave. It was the same woman, the woman he had refused to serve just the day before, the woman he had so easily dismissed. His eyes widened, his jaw tightening, as the reality of what was happening began to set in. She didn't walk up to him to complain, to argue, or to demand an apology. Instead, she calmly introduced herself. "I'm the new owner of this place," she said, her voice steady, yet carrying the weight of her resolve. The waiter froze. The room seemed to pause with him. There was no escaping the truth. She had done what he never imagined possible. She had come back, not as a customer, but as the person in charge. She wasn't just some random diner seeking justice. She had taken control, changed the game entirely. The restaurant that had rejected her now belonged to her, and in that moment, the power dynamic shifted entirely. The waiter's face reddened, his discomfort evident as he stood there, unable to speak. He had seen her as nothing more than a person to serve. He had dismissed her, judged her, and yet now she was the one holding all the cards. The girl wasn't here for revenge. She wasn't the type to shout or make a scene. She simply wanted him and everyone else to realize something. She was more than they ever thought. She was not someone to be overlooked or underestimated. And as she made her way behind the counter, greeting her new staff, the waiter stood in silence, his mind racing. The power had shifted, and he, for the first time, was forced to confront the consequences of his actions. What had started as a casual dismissal was now a deep, unshakable reflection. How would he face the woman who had just turned the tables on him in the most unexpected way? The girl walked up to the waiter, who still stood frozen by the counter, his mind clearly racing. She didn't raise her voice or make a scene. There was no anger in her tone, no need for dramatics. She was calm, composed, as if this moment was simply a conversation that needed to be had. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she began, her eyes meeting his with a quiet intensity. "But I do need you to understand something." The waiter, still caught off guard, looked down, unable to meet her gaze at first. The weight of her words hung in the air, and the reality of the situation slowly began to dawn on him. She wasn't here to demand anything from him. No apology, no public punishment. She was here for something far more important: acknowledgement. "You see," she continued, "yesterday, when you turned me away, it wasn't just about a table being denied. It was about something bigger. It was about being treated like I don't belong here. and it hurt. "But you don't have to be afraid of me," she said softly, her voice steady. "I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for respect." Her words landed with quiet force, and in that moment, the waiter's face flushed with guilt. He had thought she was just another customer, one he could dismiss without consequence. But now he realized the full weight of his actions, how casually he had allowed his own biases to dictate his behavior. He felt small, regret creeping up his spine. He opened his mouth to apologize, but the words seemed to stick. How could he apologize for something so deeply ingrained? For the way he had judged her before even knowing her name? "I'm sorry," he muttered, barely able to meet her eyes. "I didn't realize." The girl nodded, her gaze unwavering. She didn't need an apology from him. She had already moved beyond that. What she needed was for him to see her, not as a visitor, but as someone deserving of the same respect everyone else gets automatically. "You don't have to apologize," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But you do need to remember, this isn't just about one bad decision. It's about recognizing that everyone deserves dignity, no matter who they are or where they come from." The waiter stood there, his face a mix of regret and self-awareness. He realized too late that his actions had consequences far beyond a simple refusal to serve. He had just learned the most important lesson of all. Respect was something you gave freely, but when denied, it had a power that could change everything. And as the girl turned to walk away, he could only stand there, humbled, knowing that this wasn't just a lesson for him. It was a lesson for everyone who had ever treated someone less than human based on their appearance, their race, or any other reason. Under the girl's ownership, the restaurant transformed. It wasn't just a change in management. It was a shift in the very atmosphere that hung in the air. The once cold, distant interactions were replaced with a warm, welcoming environment. Policies were put in place that ensured no customer, regardless of race, gender, or background, would ever face the kind of discrimination she had. Staff members underwent training on respect, inclusivity, and diversity, and every new employee knew from the start that the restaurant's culture was built on understanding, not judgment. The menu may have stayed the same, but the spirit of the place was different. It wasn't just about serving food. It was about serving dignity. Every patron who walked through the door felt like they belonged, like their presence mattered. It became a place where people felt seen, heard, and valued, no matter who they were. The transformation wasn't immediate, but over time, the restaurant became known not just for its food, but for its heart. The girl had changed it all. In the end, it wasn't just about one incident. It was about standing up when the world tells you to be quiet. It was about recognizing that justice doesn't always come quickly, but it does come when you're persistent, when you refuse to let disrespect go unchecked. She had learned that by not seeking revenge, but simply by demanding respect, she could create a ripple effect that would last. She had turned a painful moment into something powerful, showing everyone around her the strength that comes from standing up for yourself and what's right. And as the girl looked around her restaurant, she wasn't filled with bitterness. She wasn't angry anymore. She had moved beyond that. Instead, there was a quiet sense of empowerment. She had done what many might have thought impossible, not through force, but through resilience and grace. With each new day, she walked forward not just as a business owner, but as a symbol of justice. In the end, this story isn't just about a single act of discrimination. It's about the power of resilience, the strength of standing up for what's right, and the lasting impact of turning adversity into change. The girl's journey shows us that true justice isn't always about revenge, but about demanding respect and creating an environment where everyone is valued. She proved that one person's determination can shift the balance of power, not through anger, but through quiet strength and persistence. As we watch her move forward, we're reminded that change is possible, even in the most unexpected places. It doesn't always come overnight, but when you refuse to back down, when you stand firm in your belief that you deserve better, you can create a ripple that affects the world around you. So, the next time you face injustice, remember her story. It's not just about what happens to you. It's about how you choose to respond. And sometimes, the most powerful response is to rise above, take control, and use your strength to make a real difference.